In business today, three things to know. First, AT&T dials up DirecTV for a giant cable and satellite tie-up. The two are talking about a merger that could change the television and broadband industry again. Then, risky deals. A staple of the 1980s, junk bonds are back and hotter than ever. Now many think they are about to crash. And big-name celebrities are lining up to buy the Los Angeles Clippers, but the team's current disgraced owner says he will fight until the end. Former New York Knick Johnny Newman joins us. Arise Exchange starts now. Hello, I'm Andrew Schmertz. We're going to begin this evening with breaking news from Abuja, the capital of Nigeria. Another deadly explosion hits the region, where reports trickling in say there are a number of casualties. No official word yet, though, on the exact number. But security officials have blanketed the area. This comes a week and a half after an explosion of a bus station in the capital where dozens were killed. We're following the story closely and we'll bring you more details of the story as it develops. The World Economic Forum is scheduled to convene there next week. And ahead of that forum, just last week, the Nigerian government said that they plan the largest security presence in the history of the nation. We will keep you posted on the details of the bombing out of Nigeria, especially later here on Arise America. Turning now to other news here in the United States. It could be another game changer in the cable television and broadband business. Reports say AT&T is in talks to buy satellite provider DirecTV. DirecTV is the second largest paid TV operator in the U.S., and a combination would create a company to rival the proposed merger of Time Warner Cable and Comcast. AT&T provides landline cable, and together the company would have around 25 million subscribers. Tim Ghriskey is the Chief Investment Officer at the Solaris Group. He joins us now to talk about this. Tim, good afternoon. Welcome back to Arise Exchange.
Good afternoon. Nice to be with you.
So what does AT&T want from DirecTV in this deal?
Well, it's really the video part, obviously, of DirecTV, which is something that AT&T has very little of. AT&T realizes that their wireless devices and the delivery of broadband is not really the future for them. It's not the big growth market. That video is the growth market, and they want part of that. They've come out and certainly said that before. Now, this is simply a rumor, though. There are lots of different ways that AT&T could go, and there have been lots of other potential acquisitions that AT&T or rumors have been mentioned over time that AT&T could affect.
Yeah, the news started with a Wall Street Journal article this morning. On the flip side, DirecTV subscriber growth has been slowing, hasn't it, as the company really has had trouble developing a broadband solution because of its technology.
Exactly, and AT&T has actually come out and said that they believe that DirecTV's technology, the satellite technology, is really going to end up being a dated technology, is not a long-lived technology for the future. So it would be curious, we think, that AT&T would actually do this deal unless all they wanted were the subscribers and that at some point they were able to convert them in another way as opposed to the satellite technology that DirecTV currently uses.
But they would be paying a premium, though, at $40 billion or so for DirecTV. Is this a result of the Comcast-Time Warner Cable proposed merger that these companies, smaller companies, are looking to do some deals?
Well, I think you've seen this really across all the markets. There's a lot of M&A activity right now, and it's really because companies want to get larger, want to be larger, and want to be well-positioned for the future. So certainly it's a reaction to the Time Warner Cable Comcast deal. They've gotten larger. AT&T really feels the need here, especially given that their current business is somewhat tapped out and in a bit of a price war, which is not good for any business.
And both of these companies, for the most part, are distributors. Is that correct? There's not a whole lot of content is king talk among these companies.
There isn't yet. But certainly content, we think, is king, and that the pendulum is going to swing even further in that direction. So you see a lot of companies, Yahoo, for instance, beginning to really produce some content here. And we wouldn't be surprised to see that happen if with whoever AT&T ends up marrying here. Certainly, Comcast, Time Warner Cable has the NBC production arm under their wing now, and that's a big advantage.
And of course, Time Warner Cable has some local news channels as well. What, from a regulatory standpoint and a consumer standpoint, this deal, if it actually went through, is a little bit different than Time Warner Cable and Comcast, isn't it? Because AT&T and DirecTV do, in fact, compete in the same markets. The sole alternative for many people is satellite.
Yes, exactly. So this isn't a breeze through the FTC by any means. They could really hold this up. They could require the sale of significant assets if indeed this is the way that AT&T goes.
Okay, Tim Ghriskey, thank you so much.
My pleasure.
Ahead of Friday's April unemployment report, weekly jobless claims show a slight drag in the labor market. Unemployment claims rose 14,000 to 344,000. The 4-week moving average also moved higher. The U.S. Labor Department will release the April unemployment rate on Friday. Consumers, though, did go shopping in March. The Commerce Department says consumer spending rose the most in 5 years, up 0.9%. And manufacturing activity picked up. The Institute for Supply Management's index rose in April. On Wall Street, stocks finished mixed after the Dow hit a record high on Wednesday. Here are the final numbers. The Dow Jones Industrial Average pulling back about 22 points to 16,558. That is off the highs from yesterday. The S&P 500 down a fraction, and the Nasdaq up about $13. Taking a look at some of the stocks we're watching today, Yum Brands, the parent company of KFC, Taco Bell, and Pizza Hut, says Greg Creed will become the chief executive of the restaurant operator and join its board of directors in 2015, replacing David Novak, who has been CEO since 1999. Yum Brands down $0.75. Online auction company eBay settled a lawsuit with the U.S. Justice Department by agreeing to refrain from making deals with other technology companies to not poach employees. eBay closing down 14 cents. And Avon Products says it's reached a preliminary deal with the U.S. Justice Department. The U.S. Justice Department been busy. And the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission to resolve a long investigation into the company's overseas business development practices. Avon closing down $1.50. And commodities, gold and oil, both pulling back on the day. To decipher the latest economic news, we turn to Uri Landesman, president of Platinum Partners. Uri, welcome back to Arise Exchange.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Okay, so what do you see looking at these economic numbers and the jobless claims, for example, what we should possibly expect out of tomorrow?
Yeah, so, I don't think there was much to read into them. I think you'll see numbers tomorrow that are much in line, probably showing some seasonal factors that will move the numbers a little up as well. I always have some question as to how many people are dropping out of the job market and hence dropping out of the denominator. So again, I think the piece of analysis you did showing the rolling average is much more meaningful than any single data point, including tomorrow's.
And isn't the big data point exactly what you just mentioned, is how many people are going back into the job market?
Right, and I think we can really start to gain some confidence in an acceleration in the economic recovery if we see, in fact, that denominator growing, not just the numerator.
Okay, so Janet Yellen spoke today saying that U.S. small banks have started to lend to customers at a higher pace after years of tightening. I've spoken to a lot of people out there, consumers and businesses, who say it ain't true. But do you see that happening? Yeah,
so I really don't. We're in a sort of unique position to see that. We lend money to small and mid-sized, both public and private companies, and the quality of the credits that we're seeing is still improving, which means that the banks who price better than us aren't seeing those yet. So my sense in this recovery has been that the banks are willing to lend money to people and to companies that don't need it, and I haven't seen that changing yet.
And what is holding the banks back, basically? Is it the regulations? Is it the fact that they're still worried about the economy? Is it that the Fed has raised the amount that they have to keep in storage?
Yes, yes, yes. And
I like being right 3 times in a row.
And also I think that 2008 wasn't that long ago. So It isn't just the regulators who are more diligent than they were then, putting on some restrictions that make sense and some restrictions that don't. But a lot of people went through some very, very serious pain then, and the risk appetite that existed then, well, thankfully isn't here now, but probably hasn't even come back halfway yet.
When you talk about the economy, we had a gross domestic product number that sort of stunned people, a very anemic number. There are some out today who say that the U.S. is about to tip into a recession. Yesterday, there were those who saying this number is irrelevant, that it was a one-time factor. Now, today, it's like, it's like the sports pages in the back of the newspaper. What's your perception of the GDP, and how much of a risk factor is that for the markets?
Yeah, I don't think it's an enormous risk factor. I'm not attributing much of a likelihood to dip into a recession, but I do think that investors might be surprised at the tepidness of the economy. Not that it will retrace, but that it won't grow as quickly as they think.
But then from an investor standpoint, if you want the Fed to continue pumping money in, you might say this will just keep the party going a little bit into the later hours.
Well, that has been, sort of one of the things that's bolstered the market, is that bad news is good news as far as investors are concerned. That, to me, is a fool's paradise and goes away at some point. I couldn't tell you the date, but eventually the stock market and the economy are going to have to stand on their own 2 feet. The Fed's going to be out of it, and that logic will no longer prevail.
Looking into the next quarter, any sectors that you think are going to look pretty good?
Yeah, I kind of perversely maybe like the energy sector. I think there's some values there.
Because they've been beaten down?
They've been beaten down, and I think natural gas probably still has some opportunities. It's missed the whole super cycle in commodity prices. Healthcare tends to be a little bit exogenous, but for the most part, I think it's the defensive sectors that are going to continue the trend of the last few weeks and perform the more cyclical, higher risk sectors.
And why that? Because of what's going on in the world right now?
Yeah, I think the U.S. stock market is about to have a fairly significant 4-month correction. And so I think, the S&P could go down as much as 250 points from here over the next 4 months. And I think that will be led by cyclicals and the riskier growth sectors.
You're looking at a 15%
decline something like that.
Or so?
Yeah.
And you would consider that a correction or something that is more problematic for the year?
I'm referring to it as a correction because I do think the market then will take out the old highs after that. Maybe not in 2014, maybe in 2015. So I'm not declaring an end to the 5+ year bull market yet, but I think we will see by far the most significant mid-bull run correction that we've seen in this market. We basically haven't seen any.
Well, that's true. We've gone almost a record long amount without one, right? So caution ahead for you.
Okay. Absolutely.
Rory, thank you so much.
Pleasure.
Coming up, looking for deals in the junkyard of high-yield bonds. Junk bonds are hot again. Arise Exchange, coming back.
If I was building my own news network, first thing I think I'd want high-quality reporters, very educated, intelligent people.
Hello, I'm Francesca Maxime.
I'm Julian Phillips.
I'm Wendy Gillette.
I'm Sophia Song Hai.
I'm Gary Anthony Ramsey. Thank you for joining us here in New York City.
I would like to see more people of color represented in high positions in media.
We've got world-class journalists, veteran journalists who have been in this industry for decades, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well.
People need to understand the problems that are going on in the community are much closer than we actually think they are.
Kayla Phillips is one of the shoppers who is suing Barney's, and she is here with her attorney. What is it that you want from them?
Not to judge every African-American person that comes in your store.
Welcome back to Exchange. Officially, they are known as high-yield bonds, but most call them junk bonds, corporate bonds that are rated below investment grade and pay high returns. The riskier the investment, the greater the reward. While defaults on junk bonds remain low, there are those calling for caution. Marty Fritz is the Chief Investment Officer at Lehman, Levian, Fridson Advisors. Welcome, Marty, to Arise Exchange.
Great to be here.
All right, so the first very basic question is describe to us what a junk bond is.
Well,
for those of us who don't remember the 1980s.
Right. Well, the high yield bonds, as you mentioned, are speculative grade, meaning that Moody's would have the investment grade going down to BAA, or on the Standard & Poor's scale, that would be BBB. So anything below that is considered speculative grade or non-investment grade. And as you say, those have higher yields. They tend to have somewhat shorter maturities. They, interestingly, tend to have stricter covenants than the investment grade bonds, but and they have a higher rate of default, and that offset is the higher yield.
But it's important to note that some are from very reputable companies and solid companies that just don't have the investment grade that they may have had a few years ago.
Well, that's right. Some of them were at one time investment grade. Some have chosen to have lower ratings, some as a result of leveraged buyouts.
So they have higher debt attached to the company.
That's right. And they're working their way back toward investment grade in a lot of cases.
A French cable company, Numericable, just set a record for junk bond sale at $11.5 billion. What sort of is behind this insatiable appetite by investors right now to buy these high-yield bonds?
It really comes back to the Fed policy and the policy also being followed at other central banks of keeping interest rates very low. And that's painful, particularly the longer it goes on. So investors look for a way to get higher yield. They tend not to want to do it by going out on the yield curve because they expect interest rates to rise. High yield bonds tend to be comparatively insensitive to rises in interest rates, not completely insensitive, but less so than higher rated bonds. So they feel this is a good way to do it, particularly with the default rate being low right now and the expectation that the Fed will continue this policy for some time.
So it's basically competition, right? That there's no other place for people to get high yields. There's low interest rate involvement from treasuries, and companies, for example, don't pay much yields on their stock these days.
That's right. And so if you were used to getting a certain level of income, you've had a very severe pay cut thanks to the Fed, so you have to look for some way to make that
we
up.
don't talk about that, but people who live on fixed incomes are hurting here. The question, though, is who is right for this market? Because how risky are these bonds? Right now, we do have a default rate that's pretty low, but what might tip the table to start seeing higher defaults?
Well, the peaks in the default rates have been associated with recessions. The peak may come a little bit earlier, a little bit later, but very significant rise is associated with that. Now, that means you'll go from the very low rate currently of under 2% to probably a low double-digit rate at the peak, and it won't go in 1 year from the present level to that level, so you'll have some escalation as we get closer to the next recession.
Would you say in a general portfolio that, generally speaking, people should have some high-yield bonds in there?
I think it's appropriate for income-oriented investors, and it's just a question of getting a reasonable level of risk within the portfolio. Institutions often have 10 or 15% of their fixed income portfolio in this area. What is appropriate for an individual depends on a lot of factors.
People may remember the Michael Milken days, who was a champion of junk bonds. Have we sort of cleared the table of the problems that we saw back in the 80s?
Well, that's really ancient history by now. People still bring that up every time there's it gets...
should we change the name of junk bond?
Well, the high yield bond actually was used at least as early as 1919 by John Moody. People have an idea that it's a euphemism that was coined by Michael Milken, but it's not the case. So I think that high yield is really descriptive, whereas junk is, it's kind of a pejorative term, really.
Sure. Okay. Marty, thank you so much.
It's a pleasure.
Okay, talk to you soon. Yep. Time now for our business ticker stories making news around the world. A little assistance for Ukraine from the International Monetary Fund. The IMF approved a $17.1 billion bailout to help Ukraine's nearly bankrupt government. The loan comes as Russian troops are said to be amassing along the eastern border of Ukraine. The funds will be released over the next 3 years. Auto sales turned around in April. The automotive industry saw a 7% increase in sales in April from the previous year. That's the best April since 2005. Ford was one of the few companies to see profits fall and has announced its CEO, Alan Mulally, will step down on July 1st to be replaced by current COO, Mark Fields. That was expected. Meanwhile, GM has announced yet another recall. 56,000 Cadillac SRX crossovers, models year 2013, will be recalled due to an acceleration defect. So far, GM has recalled over 7 million cars this year. Taco Bell has revealed what's in its mystery meat. After the food chain announced its tacos contained 88% real meat, customers began wondering, what's in the other 12%? Now the company has divulged what makes up the rest of the meat, included something called trihalos and maltodextrins. If you can't pronounce it, should you eat it? But Taco Bell says those are all found in your local grocery store and are safe. And it's May Day, May 1st, also known as International Workers' Day. Celebrations and protests are happening around the world, though many took on a political flavor. Russia's President Vladimir Putin called for Russia's first May Day parade since 1991, when his country was still the Soviet Union. 100,000 government and political officers took to the streets holding signs saying, "Let's go to Crimea for vacation." And Putin is right. Ceremonies were less peaceful in Turkey, where clashes between anti-government protesters and police broke out in the capital. For the record, May Day, by the way, dates back to pre-Christian times to celebrate spring. Ahead, a vet ends up in the doghouse and on our list of favorite people. You're watching Arise Exchange.
Here at Arise America, we want to bring you news from a different perspective, and not just news, but analysis as well. Tell me what it was like growing up gay in Uganda.
I have suffered sexual violence, including that has been planned by my family to heal me from lesbianism.
To have somebody lead your child away in handcuffs is just not something that should be done to a 12-year-old child.
Well, you called this Victims Advocate Group, this phone number, which is sponsored by the Catholic Church, correct?
Right.
And what kind of response did you get?
They told me not to make prank calls and it wasn't appropriate, and hung up the phone.
My God. Michael Dunn could go away for many decades. Is that enough for you?
No, it's not. The person that killed Jordan Davis has to be found guilty by a court of law in the United States of America.
Time now for our favorite person of the day, when we pick one person who grabbed our attention and not for the right reasons. Today, it is a story right out of the movie Coma, the 1978 film where people enter a hospital only to end up in a coma so their organs could be harvested on the black market. Except this one, sadly, involves an unscrupulous veterinarian and a family dog. Texas family says their vet, Dr. Lou Tierce, kept their beloved dog Sid alive so he could use the pooch for blood transfusions. Last October, the vet had told Jamie and Marion Harris that Sid, their 4-year-old dog, had a terminal condition and should be euthanized. Reluctantly, they agreed. And they thought Sid would be buried in a nearby farm. But months later, the Harrises got a phone call from an employee of the vet with the horrifying news that Sid was not only alive, but he was being kept in a cage so the good doctor could use him for his blood. Look at Sid. The Harris's family sprung into action and rescued Sid. They found him alive and took him to another vet where they discovered he never needed to be euthanized in the first place. Sid is now recovering with his family. As for the doctor, police are investigating whether to pursue animal cruelty charges. And so Dr. Lou Tierce is our favorite person of the day. Next, former NBA star Johnny Newman is here to talk about who might end up owning the LA Clippers. You're watching Arise Exchange.
On Arise Review, we take an in-depth look at the week's top stories. You'll hear from some of the best analysts in the world on a wide range of topics. Here are some highlights from our last show.
I would not call them protesters because I believe, as many other Ukrainian people do, that these people are actually Russian special forces and Russian militaries.
So the way that the state has gone about this case, and prosecutor Harry Nell, whose nickname is actually the Bull Terrier for being so ferocious with his cross-examination, even though we've seen all this fierce cross-examination in court, what it comes down to is trying to make Oscar Pistorius' story seem less believable for the judge.
If the new president, which supposedly is going to be the army leader, is going to claim to have some credibility, they need to free journalists. You cannot have free and fair election without free press.
I'm Julian Phillips. Catch Arise Review every Sunday at 11 a.m. Eastern Daylight Time and 1500 GMT, only on Arise News.
The stars are lining up and the power bids are pouring in. Magic Johnson, Oprah Winfrey, David Geffen, Floyd Mayweather, Diddy, and Ricky Rose are just a few of those interested in making a play for the Los Angeles Clippers. This after the NBA banned owner Donald Sterling for life from the league and is likely going to force him to sell the team. Former NBA star Johnny Newman has been following the story closely. He spent 16 years in the NBA with several teams, including the New York Knicks and the New Jersey Nets, and he joins us by phone right now from Norfolk, Virginia. Johnny, we are honored to have you on the program. Welcome to Arise Exchange.
Glad to be here. Thanks for having me on.
So I understand you're going to be talking with some retired players a little bit later today. What is the general perception of how the NBA has handled this?
I think we've been 100% behind Commissioner Silver, and we're very pleased with the decisions he's made thus far.
And, you know, the question, though, is Sterling has sort of had a reputation for now some time about discrimination and discriminatory actions. He's been sued on numerous occasions, yet this didn't really boil over until this happened. So where is the NBA? Shouldn't they be involved a little bit earlier? You know, how does someone end up owning a team? Is there any vetting practice going on here?
Well, I guess, you know, things, tend to happen and things do slide by, unfortunately. And this is something that seems to be definitely from the comments, but like you said earlier, there are some instances that happened before that should have been a red flag.
So who do you think might end up owning this team? Who do you understand is sort of the real serious contenders here? I mean, Matt Damon says he wants to own the team, but who do you think is really seriously on the list?
Well, I tell you, I always like, Magic Johnson. He's a proven guy. He knows how to, put deals together. But then again, you have Oprah Winfrey and some other guys who would love to own a team and who have definitely deep pockets, but they also have the passion and they have excellent business individuals, and I think that's very important to the NBA.
Well, and Johnson, of course, owned part of the Los Angeles Lakers for some time. Generally speaking, as a player and a former player, do you want to see an owner who is very well versed in basketball operations or someone who is more of a businessman type of person? For example, I'll give you an example of James Dolan here in New York. Not very well liked among the fans. He is a businessman, did not have much of a basketball background before he bought both the Knicks and the Rangers.
Well, I definitely would love to have somebody with a basketball background because they have the same passions for the players who go out there and expend all the energy, the time, the effort, and all the pressures of winning and losing. So definitely someone that has some basketball expertise, but is a sports person, but has that passion for sports.
How do you feel that when Sterling sells this team, if he does, he is going to walk away with hundreds of millions of dollars? He's already a billionaire, but he's still going to make out like a bandit, literally, when he sells this team.
Well, over the years, he's ran the team to the best of his ability, whether they were losing or winning. It seemed like he was scoring big on the accounting sheet. So, that's good for him. I mean, he made an investment. He's going to receive a return on his investment, but I think that's totally different in the way he treats people and his views on, different individuals.
Do you think the players would support in any way if he was able to sell the team to members of his family? I don't know anything, whether his kids would be interested or not, but that's sort of been up for discussion.
Well, I don't think so. I think that would just be an extension in some way, in some form, and I don't think that would be a satisfactory sell.
And finally, this has sort of raised the topic of perceived racism in other leagues. And front and center, the Washington Redskins. A lot of talk that this should be a sign that the NFL should force the changing of the name of the Redskins. Where do you come down on that?
Well, I'll tell you, it can be offensive, and, it's just no place for that. I think the team has had some success up there. This has been something that's been pushed for a while, the change of the name, and nothing's happened yet. But I just really feel it's offensive to people. They should change it.
Well, yeah, I mean, you want to be as inclusive as possible. Finally, I understand you're also going to be talking to Dr. J out there. Any chance that Dr. J might have some interest in buying this team as well?
Oh, I really don't know. It's definitely a great time down here in Norfolk. At a ABA Virginia class reunion, Dr. J, Iceman, George Gervin. I tell you, those would be some great guys to work for if they were owners of the team.
Johnny Newman, thank you so much. An honor to have you here on Arise Exchange. Thank you for your thoughts.
Thank you.
Tomorrow on Arise Exchange, countdown to the summer travel season, how to get the biggest bang for your buck when it comes to traveling this summer. Final look at the markets here. Dow Jones Industrial Average pulling back from yesterday's record high down to 16,558. But for the most part, a mixed day on the markets. Not a lot moving them right now. Thanks for watching Arise Exchange. I'm Andrew Schmertz. Good evening.